All right, in the last video I mentioned that we'd be going on to step number 4, video number 4. It's actually number 5, I misspoke. So we're on the 5th video, and as you can see, just a little summarization of what we've done so far. We've created a three-dimensional looking house by starting off with a two-point perspective. There's two vanishing points, and each of the edges on this face go to the left vanishing point. Each of the edges on this face go to this vanishing point. The top goes to this vanishing point because I wanted it to be in alignment with this part of the building. But I could have put the peak on this side and then the back edge like this one going that way. It's all up to me on how I want to make this work. For your practice work, I want yours to look as much like this as you can make it. But when we get to our landscape with a building drawing project, the one that brings all of this information together, I want you to be creative so you can change it up. You can put many buildings into a neighborhood. You could do a cityscape instead of a neighborhood. You could do a cabin in the woods. There are things that you need to include with it, though, so make sure you read the description of the objectives for that project. A couple things I want to finish up before we go into the next steps is, if we're on the ground here, this is maybe grass or gravel or something in the front yard. Here's a sidewalk, remember, and then the sidewalk has a street next to it. Let's put the back edge of the street at the left and at the right in place so that we kind of give those things a little bit more context. By the way, the sidewalk here is using only one point perspective right now, but we can use the other vanishing point on the other side to do some other things that will help to make it look more realistic. So we'll do that too. We're going to put in this back edge. The street has this only one vanishing point too to make it happen, and this one only has one vanishing point too. So you're going to be using 1 point perspective and 2 point perspective in your final artwork. So at this vanishing point right here on the horizon line, we're going to bring another edge that goes this way off the page, maybe about half the distance from the horizontal line to the paper, and that'll be the left-hand side of our street. We don't want to bring it, actually that's even too narrow. That's more like a bike lane, right? We don't want to have it be too narrow. So let's just say that maybe that is actually the divider line between the two lanes themselves. The distance from here to here should be about the same from here to here at that distance if we're going to make it a two-lane road. Let's just say, okay, that's okay for maybe a small country road. So here's our other side of the road here. Here's the divider line that separates the two lanes, and it could be turned into a dot. What do you call that? The divider lines that separate them, right? So that maybe they become a divider between the two lanes. Let's do the same thing on the opposite side. So it should be about the same distance at this same point for those roads, for the road. So I'm just going to do some sighting, right, to make sure that at about the same place they're about the same width, starting at the vanishing point. There we go. Goes off the page like that for the first lane. That's like that one. And then we want another one that goes off the page about this way, from the same vanishing point. The distance from here to here should be the same here and here. And once again, this could be turned into a dotted line that divides the two lanes. And we could talk about that a little bit more in depth, but it's going to be wider here than it is down there, and they kind of disappear as they go in the distance too. So now we've turned it a little bit more into a street, two streets, having a corner being way down here somewhere where they come together. So we're probably standing on the corner looking at this house. Here's our eye level, whether we're standing on the lawn looking at the house or stepping up onto the steps of the house. That's where our eye level is going to be. Let's talk about the other uses of these lines. Like I said, this so far only uses 1 point perspective for this sidewalk to go back there, but we could use this other vanishing point over here to put in the dividers. If you walk down a sidewalk, you'll notice that when they're poured, the cement or whatever they're made out of is poured. They've got lines that separate one pad of the sidewalk from another, and the distance from the line that separates the two pads to the next one is more the closer they get to you, and the distance decreases as it gets farther away from you. So let's put a pad right about here. I'm going back to this vanishing point there. So the distance from this one that I don't even see to that one is more than from that one to that one. Now I want to do the same thing here. I want to make sure it's less for this next one than this distance was. I'm still going to the same vanishing point over here. So we follow this edge over to this vanishing point to create our next pad. And as they go into the distance, not only do they get smaller, but they get less noticeable. They get lighter, they get maybe a little less detail in them, so you can very likely not see all of them. And they just kind of disappear as they go back in space. The distance decreases and the clarity of them decreases as they go back. So we wouldn't even see anything more than that. We could put lines in this one too. And if we use this as our main guide, the distance for each of the pads of cement should be maybe about like that, and getting a little bit bigger as they get a little closer to us, but not much. A little bit bigger. All right, so stepping over there, it just kind of flattens the ground out a little bit more to have these in place. So you would do the whole things, and I could usually the walkways pads line up with the sidewalk pads. Not always, but usually they do. So we can use that as a guide to help us set these up. Remember, as they get closer, the distance from front to back becomes more. They become a little darker, a little bit more obvious. This one just kind of goes right off the page like there. And then maybe we just barely see the next one on this side. And I'm going to put it above it so I can see the distance that I'm making. And maybe it just kind of fades out. Okay, so that's for the sidewalk. Now our next step is we're going to put a tree in the foreground. The foreground, if you read your notes, the foreground is the lowest part in the picture plane. This is your picture plane, right? From the bottom of the paper to the horizon line, it's set up into 3 grounds. This is your foreground, so the sidewalk here and over to here to the street, this is all foreground. The middle ground is in the middle of the picture plane, and it's about like this. And then the background is this area behind the house up to the horizon line. Now that doesn't mean a bird can't be flying up here and be in the foreground. It also could be falling or landing on this building's edge on the back side of it and be in the middle ground. So, it has to do with how things are on the ground, but there's a relationship to the ground for things that are hovering in space. We're going to put a tree in the foreground. So if our tree in the foreground, let's just put it maybe right here. It's going to be a nice little tree. It's going to be a tree, though. It's not going to be a shrub, right? A shrub would be below the horizon line. It would be something that's knee-high or less. And we're going to make it go above the horizon line. So I'm putting in one edge of it. And it's going to overlap our house. That's one of the techniques for showing space and depth, is overlapping, if you remember from your notes. So I'm just putting a branch from the trunk of the tree going off this direction. Remember, trees are 3-dimensional objects too. They're organic. I'm going to bring another branch coming this way. And then I'm going to split them off. Because they're 3-dimensional, they're like cylinders in their roundness. They have 2 sides to them, obviously, and they curve. And that's why I'm making these lines here curve where they meet up with the main branch. And I'm just doing a few branches to set it all up. Oops, I don't like how that one went. So we'll just do this. We'll bring this over, overlap a little bit there. So I'm just kind of getting an idea set up in place for my tree. So some branching off. It's overlapping. Where it overlaps, it needs to, there we go. So this branch right here is being overlapped by another branch that's coming, it's growing on top of that one and coming toward us a little bit more than this one is. So because it's 3-dimensional and it's curved like a cylinder, at the bottom it's below our eye level. So remember, with cylinders, they curve upward, kind of the smiley curve, right? The lower it is from the horizon line, the more this curve is. And the closer it gets to the horizon line, the more it would straighten out. This was really well down below, so it's a curve like a cylinder. Now, with that tree, because it's overlapping the house, we get rid of the lines of the house that we can't see through the tree. So you want to get rid of any of the parts of the house that are being hidden by parts of the tree, and that'll help to create that sense that it's closer to us than the house is, right? So if you don't erase those parts, then it'll look like a transparent tree, or it won't be believable in the sense of space and depth. And then if you accidentally erase parts of the tree, obviously you need to go back in and redefine them. This tree so far doesn't have any leaves on it, but eventually it can. For this practice, we don't have to do much more than just do something like this in place to show the space and depth. I'm going to finish it a little bit more when we go off the video before the next one. The directions also tell you there needs to be a tree in the middle ground. So let's put another one over here. There's space. We want it to be smaller than this one, but look like it's about the same size in reality. So the distance, because it's farther away from us, the distance from here to here is going to be less on this one here and here. I'm going to put its outer right edge here. I'm going to put its other edge there about here. This distance needs to be less than that one because it's so much farther away from us. And because it's closer to the horizon line, that curve is going to be a little bit less than it is here, but it'll still be there, okay? It's just a little less. And then just like this one, it branches off right at about the horizon line and comes up, and its branches don't go as high because it's farther away. But it still goes in a way that is believable in relationship to the rest of the space. And it could look a lot like the other one, or it could be a different type of tree. In previous years, I've shown students how to draw the 3 basic types of trees. This year we don't have time with distance learning to do that. So the best you can do is probably just look at some photographs of trees to include into your landscape. So there's my middle ground tree. Don't forget to erase anything that it is overlapping. Yes, it could have overlapped the corner of the house too. Yes, this tree could overlap parts of the farther away tree, right? This one's closer, that one's farther away. So just think about how you can be creative in making the tree exist with the ground. Let's get one last thing in mind here. With the trees, remember they can have foliage, they can have other branches that go different directions. I could have another tree farther away, and that's what I want to show you. Let's say I want to have another tree way in the distance in the background. So I could put another one really small right here. It branches up just like these do. And it's smaller, it's less detailed, and it's lower to the horizon line. This, if we were standing as close to it as we are this one, it would be as big as that one, all right? But it's so far away, it's just a tiny little thing. But notice it's still above my eye level. The top of the tree is here above my eye level. Here's my head and my eyes. I'm standing on the ground right here next to that tree, all right? If I was in the distance with it. So once you've got your picture to that step, then go on to our final video, which is number 6, and we'll talk about the far background, putting in some mountains or hills in that background. While you're gone, I'm going to finish up my trees.